Everybody, this is Randy Kaufman, All Things Engineering. And today I want to talk about what I think will happen to Vladimir and Putin. Remember to hit that little red button and subscribe. It's a new channel, trying to get a lot of subscribers to it. Give me some comments, leave me some feedback. I'll try to get back to you. But what I want to talk about is what everybody is talking about with Vladimir Putin. They'll say he's got cancer. And that could be true, that could not be true. I mean, you don't have his doctors. You don't know what's really going on. You have all these guys that are spying. And even if he has cancers, he still had cancer treatment. I mean, he's not been, he's probably had the best of care. He probably had the best doctors that Russia had. He probably had the best drugs that came in from the West. He probably had the best treatments possible. And there's all sorts of rumors about what kind of cancer he's had. He's had prostate cancer, colon cancer, you name it. He's had all sorts of stuff. And all that could be true, but he's a 70-year-old guy, and people will look for signs of this. And they'll say, oh, well, look at him holding on to the table and stuff, and his foot patting. Well, he could have a little bit of Parkinson's disease, because people with Parkinson's disease tap their feet. They hold on to tables to make themselves steady. I mean, he's 70 years old. He's a 70-year-old Russian guy. And at 70 years of age, you're going to start having a little bit of mental health, a little bit of health problems. Now, I don't think that's got anything to do with this, and people say, well, the cancer drug drove him crazy, and that's what made him go into Crimea. Into Ukraine. That's not true. He went into Crimea in 2014. He went into Georgia. He got part of Georgia. He's fought in a lot of different areas through Syria, all these areas. He said, the worst thing that happened was the Soviet Union fell. And he does not like this at all. So he's wanting to rebuild Russia. Now, he went in and he started grabbing little pieces here and little pieces there. And the West put some sanctions on him, and it wasn't good for Russia, but he had all that oil and gas that the West had come in and got because Europe needed the oil and gas. So they went in and they got the oil out for them because they couldn't do it themselves. In 1990, they literally couldn't get the oil and the gas out of the ground. They didn't have the expertise. They didn't have the know-how. So their technology was extremely far behind. I remember back in the 70s, they were buying handheld video games, the little simple ones we had back then, and they were pulling the chips out of them to go into the rockets because they didn't have any computer chips. The only computers they had were the old, big, huge mainframes like from the 1960s, and this was even in the 80s. And they had no microchips at all at that time. After the Soviet Union fell, the West came in and said, well, we'll help you get the oil and the gas out. And it was like a symbiotic relationship. They needed the money from Russia, from Europe, and Russia, they were sending the oil and the gas over that Europe needed. So it worked well for both parties. And so at some point, they actually thought about bringing Russia into the European Union. They were trying to get them to be more westernized, and they got more westernized. They had McDonald's, they had iPhones. They were starting to get their country was being brought up to date. And it was starting to get to be in the 21st century instead of the 1800s, which was about where Russia was at almost in most areas. And it still is in a lot of areas in those rural parts. They still live like they did almost like in the early 1900s, almost in those parts. So Russia was coming along, though. But then now you don't have anything. Now it's like they said, you can't buy an iPhone there. You don't have a McDonald's. You don't have anything anymore. So Russia now has all these companies that closed and left. So now they're trying to say they only have 5.5% unemployment. There's no way. I mean, IKEA allowed, it was like 10,000 people. McDonald's pulled out. That was a lot more people. And they tried to reopen it up with their brand. But, and try to re-employ those people after months and stuff. But you're talking about a burger. And now they can't get computer chips, so they can't manufacture cars. They haven't been manufacturing cars now for months. They can't manufacture planes. Matter of fact, Putin snapped the other day because they had these plane contracts, and the guy said, "Well, they're being let," and it's like, "No, they're not, because they're not being produced." Well, they can't be produced. They don't have any chips because the United States developed all that technology. They developed all the computer technology for all the chips and all that. We just allow everybody else to build them. It's just like the technology to even make the machines. There's one company that makes machines that makes the chips, and this thing is incredible. It's like 3 microns over all the United States. The mirrors are so flat that they had to use, and these machines constantly 24/7 print out. They print out chips on those very small scales down to like 7 nanometers. Now, so the machines that are made is made by a Denmark company, but the United States is the one that developed the technology and has all the patents. That's the reason lately, we withheld that technology from China because China does like the tier 3 chips, the worst ones, which are the really old like stuff that goes into like maybe a a cordless phone or something of that nature. But the stuff that goes in computers and stuff, we allow the people from Taiwan and South Korea to produce those chips. But the technology for all those chips is really owned by the United States. So we have a say. If we don't want them to have the machines, they can't have them. So, but we've allowed them to have them to produce the things. Of course, they're wanting to bring more of that back here. But so now, but the United States, because they own the machines that develop all those chips, the United States has a big say in all this. So they can sit down and they say, okay, you can't give Russia any of this technology. You can't give them any chips. So they're out of chips. They can't produce cars because of that. They can't produce airplanes because of that now. So all that is hurting their labor. A lot of people fled. And of course, maybe 5.5%, but, 500,000 people left right at the start of this. And then when he started mobilizing, hundreds of thousands started fleeing over into Georgia, Turkey, and different countries. So, yeah, it may be they're cutting 5.5, but okay, I can't find 1 million people that are in hiding in Russia somewhere or they've left the country. And yeah, but if you look at the number of people that were employed before the war and the number of people that are employed now in Russia, it's probably dramatically fell, probably 10 or 15% because of that. And their population, most of it is very old. So who left? It was all the younger people. And they're not having kids there. They have had very few kids forever. Well, they're not going to have kids there even if they're still staying because it's so uncertain. And so, he's literally destroyed his country. But right now, that oil revenue has stopped in 1st of January. So Europe isn't buying oil from Russia anymore. Now, they were making billions of dollars every month off of all that oil and natural gas. Well, that stopped. That was 40% of the revenue to run the country. Well, now you're going to have to start laying off government employees. You start laying those off, then what happens is they're not buying anything. So stores start selling less. They're going to be laying off people, and it gets into a downward spiral. And there are already a lot of things that are scarce in Russia. You can't find paper. You can't find a lot of things that they used to even be able to find there. Food is becoming scarce. They grow enough food to feed themselves, but the thing is, they can't grow all the food that they want. I mean, it's just like with us. We produce a lot of food here. We ship a lot of food out to other parts of the world. We also import a lot of food from other parts of the world. And it balances out as far as that goes. But they don't grow but enough food to feed themselves and a little bit more, but They can't grow sugar, obviously. They can't grow bananas, things like that, anywhere in Russia. So they import all that. So all those imports are getting harder and harder to come by. And all through this time, they've had like an 8% decline in their wages and a 17% inflation rate. So they're making 25% less money. And I don't know if you could sit down today and say, well, yeah, I could survive off 25% less money and from one year to the next. I mean, and it's probably going to be that way next year too. It's probably going to be another 25% more loss because they're still going to have a really high inflation because there's going to be a lot of demand for almost no products that they've got. Now, at some point, probably in the next 5 to 6 months, what's going to happen with Russia is people are going to start starving. And there's going to be a lot of people that's just not going to be able to afford food. At that point, they're going to start uprising. It doesn't matter about the guys. You got guys with guards and guns and all that. You're dying anyway. You got no food. And this is the guy that's going to be blamed for this. And they're going to uprise against him. And, and they may try to do a coup as far as the country or somebody else, maybe a strong guy that does it. But I don't think any of that will happen. I think Putin, when he sees that, the people start uprising, he's going to flee the country. He's got somebody else he's going to put into power. And he's probably got billions stashed away in Argentina. And he's going to probably flee down to Argentina and live out the rest of his life. Argentina took all the Nazi war criminals, and, as long as they had millions of dollars, they were happy. And the same way with Putin. They'll be very happy to take him, got all that money, and he won't get tried for these war crimes. But now he's just, let's face facts. He's probably got all this planned out ahead of time. He's not stupid. And, he'll push it till he knows probably, that what happens to Russian leaders, and he's going to say, hey, I don't want my head chopped off, so I'm getting the hell out of this country while I can. And he's going to say, boys, you're in charge now. And he's going to get on a plane or whatever, and he's going to fly out of the country, and he's going to land somewhere down in South America, and you're never going to see him again. And, he's going to go into hiding. But he's going to have billions in reserve, and he's going to live out his life, in a nice, comfortable way. But guys, that's the video. That's what I think will happen to Putin. I hope you enjoyed it, and give it a thumbs up if you did. Leave me some comments. I'll try to get back to you.